Arthur Anderson, you remember that name? It was once the gold standard for integrity and innovation in accounting. Well, then came Enron. Anderson did Enron's books, and in 2002, both companies went down in flames. Well, a man who rose and fell with the firm's fortunes wrote about that experience in his book called And You Thought Accountants Were Boring, My Life Inside Arthur Anderson. And Larry Katzen, this is your story in your 35 years with Arthur Anderson. And you say essentially that the collapse of your company, your former employer, was not the result of just garden variety government prosecution, but government persecution.
That is correct, Bill. If you would ask most people what they thought about Arthur Anderson during that Enron situation, to this day they would say we screwed up the audit. When in fact, there's not been one bit of evidence that showed there was anything wrong with the audit performed at Enron.
Well, the guilty verdict that the government won was in fact overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. But that image, though, of shredding papers, of concealing emails, of sloppy record keeping, or sloppy auditing, that's the impression.
Right, and in fact we did shred papers, but these were all to-dos and drafts and documents that didn't support the audit. And that is required by every auditing firm to do that. So yes, we did shred it, and if we thought they were doing something devious, we certainly didn't do it in a devious way, as we were right in the middle of the Enron's accounting department.
So why do we have this impression? Is it because the government controlled the information that was coming out on that story?
Well, they are the ones that prosecuted us on destroying of evidence. And we were found guilty in the initial jury verdict. But as history shows, the Supreme Court overruled it on a 9-0 decision, and they made that decision within a few weeks.
Isn't that interesting? It wasn't that much later, but yet that's the impression, though, is that the company was guilty. That's why it's not around anymore.
Well, that is correct, but we weren't guilty, and as history shows, there's still nothing. The government has subpoenaed millions of records, looked at millions of documents, and yet today there's not one bit of evidence that they showed that the audit was a defect.
So government overreach?
In this case, yes.
Sounds like it'd be a great screenplay.
Well, it would be. It would be, because this is something that should have never happened. The largest accounting firm in the world, in 90 days, was put out of business. 85,000 people lost their jobs. They had to get different careers, and that should never happen.
Well, it's a fascinating read. Larry Katzen, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.